going to show how we go about creating a service that we can host in a web app for containers on Azure that uses a managed identity to connect to an Azure SQL database. So the first thing we need to do is create a service. So I'm just going to make a new directory, and then I will create a new web API for .NET. Okay, that's created. Now I will open up that directory. Okay, and I'm not going to need any of these application settings or anything. I'm going to do all that through environment variables. So I'm just going to delete that. I won't need these launch settings or anything. I'm just going to use Kestrel for everything. Yeah, I think this is pretty good then. So in the program section, one change I'm going to need to make is I am going to need to host this on a particular port that is given to me by the app service. And so I am just going to do this to basically say host on all addresses for whatever port it needs to be hosted on. That's going to come in via an environment variable. So I'm going to go ahead and create a public property for that. Let's see, this will be an integer. And sorry, this will be an environment variable. Yep, get environment variable, and then environment variable will be called port. And actually, let's do it this way. Let's get the environment variable for port. Let's do a try parse on that. And if we can parse it, then we'll return the port, and if we cannot, then we'll just return port 8080. Okay, so now as we get the environment variable port from the system, we can pass that through, and that should, oh, this needs to be static. Okay, good. Now it's all happy, and we can read that in. And I think that's pretty much all we're going to do. Yeah, I'm just going to leave. I guess I'm going to take off some of these settings here, and we'll just do routing and endpoints, since we don't really need anything else for this particular test. And then under the controller, I am going to need to modify this in order to connect to an Azure SQL database. Rather than you can see here, it just by default is randomly creating some temperatures and summaries. Instead, we'll put some of that data in a SQL database, and then we'll return that on this get method here. In order to write the code we're going to need to do here, we're going to need to pull in some components from NuGet. So let me just go out here so I make sure I get the namespaces correct. We're going to need .env, which is going to let us pull environment variables from an env file. We're not actually going to probably use this when we deploy out to the web app, because there's already a way to pass in environment variables, but for local testing, this is going to make it a little bit easier, because for local, we can just create a .env and put whatever settings we want to put in here. Like right now, the setting I want to put in here is port 8080. That was my default anyway, but at least this way I can control what port my application starts up on. And as I do more things with this, I like putting in a connection string and that sort of thing. Then I'll need to do that as well. All right, and then I actually need to be able to read that. So we would go .env, .net, .env config. We're not going to require an env file, but if we have one, we'll read its configuration. That just reads everything in the env, makes it an environment variable, and then we're good for the rest of the application. Now the other thing I'm going to need is the Microsoft Data SQL client, I believe is what it's called. Yep, and that is what it's called. Let's see, I'm going to pull, rather than going with the preview version, we'll pull the production version. Okay, so that's in there now. And now we can go to our not there, but our forecast controller, and we can try and read some values. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create a SQL connection. Okay. And that is going to take a connection string. And for our connection string, we're going to do basically what we did before, which is read this from an environment variable. So we can just, I kind of like putting all my environment variables in one place just so it's really easy to find them. So I'm going to do that here as well. Just going to do a public static string, call this con string. And we will return the system environment. There's not going to be any default for this, so we're not even going to bother to set one. If it's not set, then this is just going to blow up. Okay, so here in our env, we're going to create a connection string. We're going to have to get that from Azure here in a minute. And we can go ahead and start creating that SQL resource. Actually, I'll do that in a minute because I'm going to have to create a number of resources. So we'll just, for now, we'll just stub out. We're going to have a connection string that's going to go here in our env file. And then over here, we've got, we need to actually read this connection string, and that is going to come from program.connection string. Okay, so we're going to read in the connection string that's going to set that. But when we pass our connection string, we're not going to pass any credentials on it. Instead, we're going to use a managed identity. And so we need to there's an open async here. Actually, for this, I don't even know that we need to use open async. We can just use open because we're not really going to have any parallelizable code running here. Actually, you know what? We are going to do it async. That's best practice. We will do that. So let's make this a task. And let's make it awaitable. Oops, I'm sorry, make it async. And then we can make this await opening a connection. Now, okay, so we can pass in a cancellation token, so we should create that. A new cancellation token source. That's in system threading. And then we can do CTS token here. And then, as I mentioned, we're not going to have any sort of credentials in the connection string, so we need to get those in the form of an access token. And what we need to get that from is there's a library, Microsoft Azure Services. I think it's app authentication. So we can grab that and add it. Okay, and then inside there, we can just do this up here. There is a Azure Token Service Provider, I believe is what it's called. All right, let's try Microsoft Azure Services App Authentication. Azure Service Token Provider. Not Token Service Provider. Okay. So we will call that Token Provider. All right, and then we can get an access token by calling for a specific resource. And the resource that we need to call is just database.windows.net, I believe. We actually need a slash at the end of this, and then we need to await this because it's an async method. Okay, so now what we have is we have a token provider. We're opening up a connection to our SQL database. We're going to provide, or we're supplying the connection information. We're not actually opening it yet. We're going to provide an access token, and then we're going to attempt to open the connection. And then, of course, the normal stuff. We will create a SQL command. And text, let's just do select. I don't know. What do we need? We need a date. We need a temperature. And we need a summary. So let's just grab those things from, we'll just call it weather. And we can execute that. SQL data reader. Okay. And while reader.read. Let's see, it looks like what we actually need here. Yeah. You can do new weather forecast date. What did I say? Temp. Temperature C, reader 1. And summary. And I think it's going to be complaining, complaining about the casting. We can do, we're going to put these in as the right data types, so we should be fine here. What is temperature C? That's an integer, so that's fine. And then summary is a string, of course. Oops. Okay, and then we're just going to add all that to a list. A weather forecast. We're going to return the list and need to make that a function. Okay. And here we're going to add each of the weather forecasts to our list. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Just a real simple function. The important part here is we get the access token provider. We're going to pass the token provider in, and then we're going to select and run from our SQL database. Go ahead and create the SQL database. And while we're at it, we'll probably create the container registry as well. So we're just going to use a regular old Azure SQL database, single database. And I'll create a new server. All right, and we'll create it with a public endpoint. And really nothing else needs to be special, so we'll just let that start to create. And as soon as that's done validating and starts creating, we'll go ahead and create the, yep, okay, good. Now we can create the container registry. Oops. And create that same place. I actually do have to enable this for administrate, to give it an administrative user. Well, normally it's the recommendation not to do that. That is actually required for the web app to function. So make sure you cut that on, or you can cut it on later if you forget to do that when you create it. But this will now create a container registry. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause this for a second until this gets done. Now that that's done provisioning, we can go to our SQL server and start doing a few different things. So first thing let's do is go to our server and enable an Active Directory admin. You can set this to groups as well, but since it's literally only me for this demo, I'm just going to point it to myself. Okay, so I'm the Azure AD admin. I'll save that. Okay, and then if we go and we set the firewall rule to my current client IP, I can save that. All right, so now I'm through the firewall and I've got, I've given myself access. So now I can go through the query editor, and I did get here, and now we can create our table. What did I call this? Weather. So we will create temperature. All right, call that temp. And summary. Okay, so we'll run that. Okay, succeeded. Now we'll insert. Oh, actually, I need to do date temp summary. Values, get date, temperature, we'll just say 45. And summary, well, this was on Celsius, so very warm. And we will insert this. Okay, and we can select back, just make sure it works. And we're great. Okay, good. So that's really all I need to do. I just need to get some data in there. And let's see, that's pretty much it, I think. Now I should be able to run this locally, but what I need to do is I need to make sure I'm actually logged in to AZ. So I'll go ahead and do an AZ login. And I need to make sure that I'm going to be in the correct subscription, because I have a whole bunch of them, so I'll copy that. Okay, and then I can do AZ account set subscription. Okay, all good. And, oh, actually, you know what? There's one other thing I needed, which I never did put my connection string in here. So I do need to look at connection strings. Azure AD integrated authentication. This is what I want to do. So let's put that in here. Oh, that's Active Directory integrated authentication. Okay, so I actually don't want to do that. I want to do a token-based authentication. So let me, I think if I don't have anything, it's probably okay, but if I do need something, I'll put it in there. Okay, so, all right, so we're good there. Okay, so now let's try this. Do a .NET run. We open up another window. Oops. Got a little bit bigger. And we'll curl localhost 8080 weather forecast. Okay, great. And so now what you'll see is I actually got back here my information, and that came out of SQL. And yeah, perfect. So I don't have any password or anything up here, and I pulled from there. Now, obviously, this doesn't actually use managed identity on my local machine since I don't have a managed identity. But what this does do is it uses that AZ login to request an access token to go out here and authenticate against this. So that's perfect. So now what I need to do is I need to take and publish this out in out as into my container registry, and then make that available as a web app. And then I can go in and also give my managed identity access to this in SQL, as well as whitelist my IP addresses. Let's give my account access. So I'm going to go. Oh, yeah. Except I don't actually have a web app to give access to yet, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and create the Docker container for this project. Yep. So here I can create a Docker file, and I need to look up the let's see, Docker Hub ASP.NET Core. And actually, let's go ahead and do this the right way, and let's do the, let's find the SDK as well, and we'll use this to build. Okay, here's the SDK. I'll call this build as exe. Oops. Okay, all right, so I need to build my container, and I'm going to copy controllers. Here, let's do work directory source. All right, I need to copy the controllers. I need to copy, what else? I'm not going to do my env because I want to actually set that through app settings. I do need to copy my CS proj though. And I do need to copy my weather forecast, or actually I'm just going to copy all the CS files. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to run we're going to run a .NET publish to an out folder, and then we are going to copy from build everything under source to well, just to where I'm already at, which is my app directory. Okay, so that should be good. Or no, I'm sorry, I wanted the out folder to go here into my app directory. And then we can do a .NET and what is this? What do I call this? mi.dll. Okay, so I think that should be good. Now we can do a Docker build. Oh, I do need to look and see what my container registry name is. Okay, that. So we will do a Docker build, and we will call this, we'll just call it MI. Call this version 1, and we will execute this. Okay, great. So now I have successfully created my container. Okay, I had paused the video there for a second because I thought I had an error in the code I had written, and that's not true. I had actually done .NET run instead of Docker run. So the command was Docker run IT port 8080, and then my application. So now I can try and hit this endpoint, but it's going to fail for two reasons. The first reason it's going to fail is because I don't have a connection string, because I didn't pass that in. We're going to actually do that as an application variable. The second reason is I'm not actually going to be able to get a access token, because as you can see right here, none of them are going to work because I'm actually inside my container and I don't have any sort of way to get to a managed identity. So that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to make sure that functionally my container could start up. So we're good there. So now let's push this out, and I need to do an AZACR login and the name of my container, or excuse me, my container registry. And then I can do a Docker push of this image. And that'll take just a second, but that'll push up. And then what we're going to do as soon as that gets pushed up is we'll go ahead and create our web app. So we'll give this just a second. It's not super exciting here, but hopefully it won't take too long. All right, okay, now we're done. All right, so if we, actually if we want to look at our registry, if we come down here to repositories, we'll see the repository we created here and the tag, so perfect. All right, now let's go ahead and create the web app. So I can just create a regular old web app. This will be in a Docker container. It'll be using Linux. We'll put it in here. We'll let it create a new plan because that's fine. This will be a single container in an Azure container registry. We will pick our registry. And yeah, I've only got one image and I've only got one tag, so that's easy enough. It already picks the right things. And really we don't need to do anything else, so we'll just let that create. Now after that creates, there's a couple things we're going to need to do. We need to put our connection string into the app settings, and we don't want to put a port because we want to let it assign a port on its own. And let's see. Oh, and then we need to take the managed identity and go ahead and create the managed identity, giving it access to the SQL server. And then we will also need to copy all the ports that it uses. So we'll give this a second here. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this creates. And so now we can go to this resource, and there's, as I mentioned, a few things we need to do. So first up, let's enable managed identity. Turn that on. Okay, good. And then we can go into, actually, continuing that, let's go ahead and give that identity access to our SQL server. Okay. Basically, we just have to put in the name of the application. Seems kind of weird, but that's really all it takes is the name. So we're just going to create a user from an external provider, and we're going to add that user with DB data reader. And we execute that, and we're all good. Okay, so now if we go back to our web, what else do I need to do? I need to give it configuration. So let's create a new setting called constring. And we need to give it our connection string that we used before. Same thing, no password, no nothing. Okay, it's all good. Save that. Let's see, ports I guess is the other thing we're gonna need. So as soon as that, okay, that's done saving. We can come under here under properties. Refresh that. Okay. If our property screen will come up. Okay, there we go. So we got here a list of outbound IP addresses. So we can just paste those in here so I can divide those up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 IP, or excuse me, 5 IPs that we need. There's also these additional outbound IPs, but that's only if you change the SKU that this operates under. So we won't need those for our case here. So now if I go back to my SQL server, I can put all of those in our firewall. I'll just call it the same as that. It's 2. Here's our third one. This is our firewall setting, so this is just allowing the SQL server to be able, the app server to be able to get to our SQL server. Okay, so that's all of our addresses, and we can save that. All right, so we're good. What else? That should be everything we need. We do need to restart our web app though, because we've changed the configuration string parameter, and that'll only get picked up when we restart this. So let me go back to our web application, and I will go ahead and stop it and then start it again. You could also hit the restart button, but okay. So that's starting up, and now what we should be able to do is curl that address / weather forecast. And if all is well, we will get our response. And we did. Great. So there we have our response. So basically, we don't have any credentials. We're able to access Azure SQL database just by using this managed identity with the web app, and we were able to publish under a web app for containers. So thanks a lot.